So I did my ministerial internship in Mequon, Wisconsin. Though it's technically part of the metropolitan area of Milwaukee, it's almost beyond it. It's in another county. It's where NBA players live in gated estates. In the 1980s, Unitarian Church North bought a big farm field on a 2-lane country road, thinking development would eventually reach there, but it never quite did. And to pay homage to the agricultural past and the land all around it, they built a church in the shape of a barn, an octagonal barn. When I would give a really great, powerful sermon, they would say, "That was a barn burner." That congregation, it was about the size of this congregation, about the same number of staff, and I'm really grateful for my time there, the minister and everyone who helped me become a professional minister. It was a kind, loving space of free faith. However, there was one person that sticks out. She was on several committees, sang in the choir, and was eventually elected onto the church board. She did not like the minister, and she let everyone know it, even though she was on the search committee that brought the minister there. One time, she started bad-mouthing the minister to me, my supervisor, the one who would be giving me an evaluation. And I remember saying, "Look, I support the minister." In the next meeting I had with my supervising minister, I explained what had happened, and I asked, "What is wrong with her? If she doesn't like this place, just leave." The minister told me in a whisper under her breath, "She's borderline." In my mind, I was like, borderline what? The minister then had me read an article about borderline personality disorder. Oprah Winfrey, the celebrity billionaire whom we heard from earlier, endured a childhood of trauma. It had been difficult for her to sleep at night for much of her life, even when she lived on the 57th floor of a building in Chicago that was staffed with security 24/7. One night, she even packed up and got a room in a hotel next door to feel safer. However, over time, she started connecting the dots and realized how her brain was working. Oprah spent her early years in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, with her grandparents and always slept with her grandmother. Her grandfather, Henry, had dementia and slept in a side room. One night, Oprah woke up in the middle of the night and her grandfather was standing over their bed. She could sense the fear in her grandmother. Her grandmother said, "Now, Henry, go back to bed. Henry, now go back to bed." And then her grandfather began to choke her grandmother. Only the screams heard by the next-door neighbor saved her life. They soon coaxed her grandfather to sleep again. And then they wedged a chair under the doorknob and strung cans on a string as an alarm. That formative experience, and then being forced to sleep on a porch on the north side of Milwaukee, was traumatizing. Every night in that setting of sleep, she got tucked into fear, tucked into her lower brain, and could not get to the hope and calm of her cortex. The authors of this book, they tell another story of a father who wears Old Spice. You know that, I don't know, my dad wore that stuff too. And he ended up abusing physically abusing his son. And years later, after his father came out of his life, the boy was enrolled in a school, and there was a male teacher. The male teacher was kind and warm and well-intentioned, but the boy just didn't like him and had a conflict with him. And one day the teacher gently put his hand on his shoulder, and the child flipped out violently. The teacher was really frustrated. Nothing seemed to work with this child. And it turns out the teacher also wore Old Spice. And the smell triggered a fear response in the boy. The good news is our brains are malleable. We can change. Oprah became not only a successful person, but someone who has cared for people and helped to get people out of traumatic situations. She is now able to put some calming space between the fear and her reaction. She sleeps well. But Oprah's resilience was not magical. She was part of a faith community centered on symbols of care and transcendence. Sunday school, then worship, then back for another service at 3 p.m., then another meeting in the evening, Wednesday prayer services. At 3.5, she was already speaking in front of the congregation. This formed a spiritual foundation and center for her whole life. It was more than doctrine or a space for worship. It was the healing power of relationships. She found community, discovered lasting connections. Church became her counselor, her comforter, her refuge, her nurturer, the ones who cared for her when she was sick. She found healing in the rhythms of the music. Everyone needs people who listen, who are present. We all need to find our people. Social connections build resilience, and they lead us to a post-traumatic wisdom. A healthy community is a healing community. I know that therapy helps, but healing often happens in community. Imagine just for a moment that something horrible happened in your life or at work, and you're all emotionally unregulated for whatever reason, and you write something on the sorrows card. You check in at a meeting at church. You see someone at social hour and they ask you about it. Maybe WeChat or someone with the pastoral care team. And you get 4 or 5 doses of reassurance, care, and understanding. That is the healing power of beloved community. Oprah Winfrey wouldn't be who she is without her own trauma and adversity. She owns it, she claims it, and she works on it. And she found ways to put her trauma to use by interviewing, writing, starting schools. She is a great example of post-traumatic wisdom. The supervising minister back in Canton, Wisconsin, at my internship, she was solid. She was competent, smart, and committed to UU ministry. Labeling the disruptive person as borderline was a well-intentioned way to show compassion and to understand the situation. I wonder now, though, not what was wrong with her, but what happened to her. Did she have some trauma growing up that was maybe made manifest around authority? Did the minister wear a similar scented perfume that triggered her? Was the order, stability, and caring community too good to be true? Did she want something familiar and comfortable that matched her trauma? And then she started acting out and causing conflict. If we were traumatized and our brain was used to abusive relationships, and then someone starts treating us nicely, we too might provoke a response to get what we expect to get, to validate our worldview. Chaos and conflict then become comforting. But in the end, I'll never know. I was more concerned with what was wrong with her instead of what happened to her. I was contemplating this as I got ready to go for lunch this past Friday. As I put on my winter boots, I thought about how we all have the same basic brain structures and how trauma flows off and makes our brain development unhealthy, especially if it happens in childhood. And as I slowly put on my winter parka and my mittens, I thought about all the trauma ICE agents are causing right now. I thought about the 3 E's of trauma: event, experience, and effect. And as I left out the back door, I thought how someone might experience an arrest differently and may not have lasting trauma as someone else might. And as I cut across the cracking asphalt of the social services parking lot that was covered with salt, I thought about how telling people to calm down when they are emotionally unregulated just won't work. Being present with someone, listening, absorbing some of their emotional intensity is about all we can do. If we do our own work to stay emotionally regulated, others may catch our calm. And then I turned onto Judson Street and I saw a young woman sitting on the sidewalk with her hands in her face, crying, just crying, with only a hoodie on. 4 college students saw her, pulled over and called 911. "My name is James. What's yours?" No response, just more crying. Her long black hair now covering her face. Someone who was on a walk knelt by her, invited her to breathe deeply. It was like we were not even there. She couldn't hear us. The passerby attempted to touch her shoulder, and they cried out only louder. I offered a prayer. A neighbor came over with a blanket. The walker, the neighbor, the 4 college student, myself, and now a police officer could not make sense of what was wrong with her. But I knew something happened to her. Her boyfriend pulled up in a car. He apologized and wept with her. The chief of police arrived in street clothes and informed the boyfriend that his driver's license was invalid and asked him to park in the Department of Social Services parking lot. She eventually got up off the frozen pavement and into the warm car. Turns out they had moved here from Virginia 2 weeks ago, not knowing it would get this cold. She was born in the North Country, though, and had family here. He thought he would be able to find work, but couldn't. Their child was staying with a relative while they figured things out. They were living in their car or staying with friends, and they were quickly running out of options. They hadn't eaten in a while. They didn't have clean clothes. They were seeking aid at DSS, and while filling out some of the paperwork, she got triggered and sat on the cold sidewalk until we found her. I invited them to come to the church to warm up, gave them my number, And after lunch, I saw them again in the parking lot and took them over to the church and community program. They were closed, but the president of the board, Fran Bailey, and others were there moving Giving Tree boxes. People got them food and winter clothes and a bathroom. One of the volunteers that was moving boxes said to me, "Hey, Padre, do they need money?" He pulled out $30 and gave it to me to give to them. I handed them the money, and they started to weep, this time not out of trauma, but gratitude. Within a short time, Fran gave them a box of food and 2 other bags that included hygiene products and can openers, plates, utensils for them. The winter coats didn't fit well, so someone offered to get them better coats at St. Mary's thrift store. People are so nice and caring here. Nobody is like this where I'm from. Then the man that gave the $30 said, "I'm sure people are caring where you are from. You just haven't met them yet." He slipped me an additional $100 bill to give to them. I gave it to them and encouraged them to go back to DSS to get put up in a hotel. Healing is always possible. Healing is always an option, and it often happens in community. May we all have the compassion to ask what happened, and may we all have the wisdom to carry our challenges with grace. Amen. And so may it be.